This presentation will explore the challenges that MSF has confronted in mitigating security risks for staff in Syria and the negotiation strategies that the organization has applied in response to said challenges. In reflecting on actions taken or forwent, this presentation strives to provide insight into how humanitarian organizations such as MSF continue to deliver humanitarian aid within conflicts characterized by shifting battlefronts, multiple actors, and an utter disregard for international humanitarian law. Notably, throughout all the negotiations in which MSF engaged, they exemplified how mitigating security risks and maintaining humanitarian access requires that humanitarian principles be applied strategically and flexibly. MSF equates a heightened level of community acceptance with greater security for MSF staff and patients alike. For this reason, MSF engages in multiple concomitant processes of networking and stakeholder mapping before and during operations in any given region. In Kabasin, an MSF project coordinator describes drinking a lot of tea while meeting with representatives from prominent families, the local council, the Islamic court, local political military groups, and other Islamic groups. Although the simple act of drinking tea may prima facie appear negligible, the explicit and implicit negotiations that take place and the relationships that are formed during this act are deeply meaningful in terms of building trust and understanding the dynamics of any context. The extent to which MSF should remain neutral when networking remains a point of contention within the organization. But one project coordinator describes having established cordial relationships with key actors in Kabasin and not pretending to be neutral in informal settings. His predecessor was convinced of the importance of keeping one's distance and steering clear of asking too many questions, especially given the general mistrust of Westerners in Syria. This example reinforces that while networking is an important component of mitigating security risks, the manner that it is carried out may depend more on individual convictions about what constitutes the best way of forming relationships than a strict adherence to an organization's core principles. In 2012, an anti-terrorism law was passed by the Syrian government, making it illegal to provide humanitarian aid in opposition-controlled areas. This led to some MSF staff to take their work underground, reaching out to their own network to continue to treat patients. Notably, houses and basements belonging to trusted contacts became vital to treating patients, while averting the watchful eyes of state security forces who would detain MSF staff for establishing a field hospital and treating armed groups. The negotiations that led to the creation of said networks and the use of homes as places to treat the wounded likely played a role in saving the lives of many of MSF's medical staff and their patients alike. Similarly, when ISIS came to power in the area which MSF operated health facilities, MSF recognized the importance of continuing a process of negotiation with the terrorist group to obtain security assurances and to continue providing humanitarian aid. Negotiating with and treating terrorists thus became a regular part of MSF's activities and the demonstrations of the organization's commitment to defending medical ethics and engaging in negotiations with all parties despite external political rhetoric criticizing this decision. MSF's principles may also serve as a tool to negotiate with hostile actors who may otherwise threaten the security of staff and patients. In Syria, MSF has reported that reminding patients of the organization's status as a neutral and impartial actor was an effective tool when negotiating with armed groups to leave their weapons outside. Similarly, at checkpoints or after having been detained by authorities, staff noted that discussing MSF's principles during negotiations with de facto authorities contributed positively to their eventual release. Finally, MSF's organizational commitment to alleviating human suffering did not inhibit international staff from reconsidering their involvement in the mission in Syria after having been exposed to the conditions within the country. The decisions that individual staff members made to stay in Syria, despite the risks that they faced in doing so, was a form of self-negotiation. The MSF staff who stayed report having been driven by a strong humanitarian impulse, such as a belief in the vital importance of their work and a refusal to abandon the Syrian civilian population. Over the course of its operations in Syria, MSF as an organization and its staff have repeatedly demonstrated the importance of continually negotiating to form networks and gain acceptance within communities in order to mitigate security risks. MSF demonstrates that negotiation is an iterative process that can be supported by the strategic application of humanitarian principles and an understanding of the symbolic and literal importance of certain gestures, such as drinking tea. The strategic application of MSF's principles in Syria demonstrates that negotiating in complex environments is not always facilitated by a strict compliance with the foundational values on which humanitarian action is built.